to take it back to Endgame, right? I hadn't watched it in a long ass time, like years, 3 years at least, probably 4 years, to be honest. And in the wake of everything we now know about Doomsday, or we think we know about Doomsday with all the leaks and the rumors and all this shit, I sat down and I was like, you know what? I want to see how much of this was set up in Avengers Endgame. How much of it was actually set up? And by the way, before I get into the reveals, because they're really cool, I just want to say too, that movie's so fucking good, dude. Even last night when I shared on the Discord that I was rewatching it, like there was a bunch of people that were like, oh, Infinity War's better. And there were some people saying that like Endgame wasn't even good. And this is just another one of those like internet brain takes that took over after this movie came out. I think it's also partially because Infinity War is a better movie, like just a beginning, middle, end movie. Yes, Infinity War is better. But this whole idea that Endgame is somehow not good or was a weak ending or was bad or whatever is so fucking ridiculous. Dude, that movie's so good. It's so good. You know what it has that like not a lot of other movies have, including the Infinity War stuff? The emotions in that film. The resolutions. Oh my God, bro. Like it's really, really good. I really enjoyed watching it, and it made me hope like, oh man, if we can even get close to this level of shit again for Secret Wars, oh my God, we're so back. But anyway, what I was really looking for was information, right? And what I was really looking for was setup for Steve Rogers for the multiverse saga and all this sort of stuff. And some of the stuff I saw actually blew my mind. So I want to begin with something about Vormir. Do you guys remember how curious we were about the Soul Stone and Vormir? And Red Skull on Vormir says something like the Soul Stone holds a special place amongst the Infinity Stones and all that sort of stuff, right? So I was curious to know if anything would be revealed that maybe I had missed when I watched Endgame back in the day about Vormir. One of the things that she said, one of the things that Nebula said when they were going over the Vormir stuff as they were planning the time heist, she calls it a dominion of death. And at the time, we didn't have death, but now we do. We literally have Aubrey Plaza playing Mistress Death or Death in the MCU, okay? So at the time, maybe that didn't mean shit to me. But now it's like, okay, a dominion of death. Really interesting. She then goes on to say it is located in the heart of celestial existence. That's what she says. She says it is a dominion of death located in the heart of celestial existence. Okay? And I was like, man, what the fuck does that mean? The center of celestial existence. So is this where the World Forge is? Is this where Arisham is? Is there some space where the Celestials come from and Vormir is connected to that? Is Vormir a World Forge? Like, all this stuff that I was thinking about, okay? And by the way, too, just because I said I would bring this up earlier, the eclipse is so obviously a Berserk reference. I can't believe I missed this when I watched it back in the day. But, like, so how many of you guys are familiar with Berserk? Either the manga or, like, one of the adaptations, like the animes or the movies. So in Berserk, there's an event known as the eclipse. And the eclipse is something that occurs when one of the main characters, Griffith, ends up sacrificing all of his friends to basically ascend to demonhood. Okay? And it should be so obvious that when the writers of the MCU were coming up with the Soul Stone and the concept of Vormir, that they wanted to tap into that Berserk energy. Now, what's interesting about that is that eclipse is located in a couple of other places. It is in the Soul Stone world, where Thanos sees his daughter in Infinity War after the snap. And there was a scene there with Iron Man that they cut. But it is also seen... Does anybody know where else? Does anybody know where else that eclipse pops up in the MCU? It pops up in Multiverse of Madness. In the world that was destroyed, likely by an incursion, where we find Supreme Strange, you see that same eclipse. Pretty interesting, man. I wonder what they're cooking with that. Was that universe then near Vormir? Does a universe after it's destroyed and the space between it that connects it to time goes away? Does it then just exist more like Vormir or the Soulstone world? Is the eclipse even real? I'm not sure. It could just be like some badass thing that they think is cool. Or there could be more to it. But I think the Vormir thing and the Soulstone is obviously very important. That's what I think. I think Vormir and the Soulstone will still be important in the next part of all of this, okay? So that was the first thing that jumped out to me. There's a lot of other fun stuff with the time travel stuff, but then the next thing that really blew my mind was Thanos at the end of the movie. And I think part of why this didn't like stick out to me right away was because we didn't have the context of the incursions and branch timelines and the TVA and all that sort of stuff. We didn't know any of that shit when we first watched Infinity War. But how many of you guys remember what Thanos is actually trying to do at the end of Endgame? How many of you remember his actual motivations? Because he gives this big speech, he talks about his motivations, he talks about what he wants to do. I think for many of us, we just kind of viewed him through the lens of like, oh, Thanos is just trying to stop the Avengers. And in fact, I remember a lot of people, including myself, were a little disappointed in the characterization of Thanos in Endgame because he was so much better in Infinity War. And so therefore, I think we kind of look past some of the stuff that he said because we're just like, oh, he's just there to serve a function for the plot and all that. This is really cool. At least I think it's really cool. You should go watch this for yourself. Thanos says, you should be grateful. But now I realize that anyone who remembers what was will never be able to let it go for the sake of what could be. And Thanos goes on to say that he appreciates the Avengers making him understand this. Now he realizes he must destroy the universe to its last atom. And then he says, I will rebuild a new one, a grateful universe. So Thanos in Endgame literally says, if anybody remembers the way it was, they will not be able to let go of trying to get that back. They will not accept what it now is. And therefore, the only way that you can do it is if you destroy the universe and remake it. Now, what I find that's so interesting about that is like, yo, that's basically what the conclusion that Doctor Doom will come to. From what we've heard, from all the rumors that we've heard. That's the same thing that Doctor Doom is going to be doing. That's potentially the same thing that Kang was doing. But here's the thing that's really interesting. With some of the stuff we've recently heard, right? Because there's this theory out there, or I guess Alex Perez said in one of his scoops recently, that the reason Stephen Strange remembers the Fantastic Four as a band from the 60s is because there was a version of the universe where they all existed together, and Stephen has some kind of an echo of a memory of what it was like with the Fantastic Four in his universe. Okay, by the way, something really interesting that I found, at least I think it's interesting. In Spider-Man No Way Home, the Peters cannot work together. Do you remember this part? They try to work together and they fuck it up, and then they have that little meeting and the pep talk, and they're like, yeah, I've never been on a team. Andrew Garfield's like, I've never been on a team. Tom Holland says, I have. I don't want to brag about this, but I will. I was a part of the Avengers. Do you know what they say to him after that? They literally say, Toby says, what is that? Andrew says, is that a band? Were you in a band? Kind of crazy, right? So I think it's pretty wild that it's like we have Doctor Strange remembering the Fantastic Four as a band. We have Andrew Garfield thinking the Avengers is a band. Could that just be like a little one-off thing that doesn't matter? Absolutely. But it could also speak to the fact that this was potentially something they had planned. This was a concept that they had where they were like, you know what we're going to do? Because think about this. It explains from a meta-contextual perspective, it explains why all of the other Marvel franchise films for like 30 years were all done in a way where there were no other heroes. The Blade movie, it's vampires and Blade. There's no Avengers, there's no X-Men, nothing. Ghost Rider, same thing. It's just Ghost Rider. X-Men, it's just the X-Men. They didn't have Avengers, right? Fantastic Four, it's just the Fantastic Four. Okay? So there's a meta way for Marvel to explain this, and that would be that this is all He Who Remains. He separated them all out so that they wouldn't be together, and yet they have some vague memory, some vague idea of what it was. Now, one of the things that I think is kind of cool about this is, what if Thanos is more right than he thinks? And maybe it's the case that even if you replace their memories, if somehow, some way, a part of their being or their soul remembers what it was like and wants that back, you'll never be able to have a satisfied, compliant new universe. Because that is part of the argument here. Is like, technically, He Who Remains creates this whole timeline, all the TVA stuff, everything's, on a script, everything's pruned if it doesn't match up, right? And yet we know the universe and the multiverse manifests chaos. It wants to break free. Thanos talks a lot about order and chaos in Endgame. A lot. Chaos and order. And ultimately, he thought he could create order by killing half the life in the universe, course correcting the entire universe. He comes to realize by the end of the film that won't work because all the people that remember what it was like will never stop trying to undo it. They can't just accept the new universe. And so instead, he wants to shred, that's the word he uses, to shred this universe to its last atom and then build a new one, a grateful universe where no one will remember what it is. Okay? You're giving Marvel too much credit? No, I don't think I am. That's the point of this. I think they were cooking. I think they had these ideas. And as I explained in the segment earlier, it's not like they knew exactly how they were going to do it, which is probably how they fucked it up. But to say that they did not have these ideas is crazy. I just told you, Michael Waldron watched Endgame before any of us did, and then he goes on to create Loki. Okay? But I got one more for you. Yes. Steve Rogers at the end of the film. Now, this one's particularly important because of the new rumors about Stephen Feige. Okay? But there's a couple of things that even I didn't remember going back to that scene. Okay? So, when Steve gets on the platform, Hulk tells him, remember, you have to put the stones back at the exact time that they were taken. Otherwise, you will create a bunch of nasty alternate realities. Hulk says that to him. Then Cap literally says, trim the branches. I got it, Bruce. Trim the branches? Alternate realities? And by the way, we kind of know that shit didn't go according to plan with Steve, right? Because he doesn't pop back up when he's supposed to. And then we see old man Steve on the bench in 616. So there was something there. Clearly, they were cooking it. There's this other part that's like, I don't know if I can quite put it in the same category as some of these other things, but remember, Tony says when you mess with time, it tends to mess back. And then he says, you'll see to Steve. What the fuck does that mean? Like, why did he say that last part? I understand him saying, when you mess with time, it tends to mess back. But then why did he tell Steve, you'll see? What does that mean? You'll see. Do you know what I mean? So there's some threads there that feel to me pretty obvious as setup for what was to come next. And I just tend to think that at the time when they were cooking Endgame, they had a lot of these ideas. And it's so obvious that like TVA pruning, multiple timelines, all that sort of stuff, it matches up with all the stuff they set up in Endgame. Thanos' motivation in Endgame will probably be the same motivation that Doctor Doom ends up having. It was potentially the same motivation that Kang had. And I'm really interested if they draw that thread as well. But yeah, I mean, look, after not watching this movie for a long, long time, and after being on the roller coaster ride of, it's over, we're so back, it's over, we're so back when it comes to the MCU, I totally understand why some of you are like, whatever. But for me, I was dead ass shocked, bro. I was shocked by some of this shit because I was like, dude, wow. Like, they literally used that language. He literally had that motivation. He uses the phrase shred it to his last atom and recreate a new universe, a grateful one. Kind of wild. So, I don't know. Just wanted to talk about that because I think it's fucking cool. And it was fun to rewatch Endgame.